Join me as we talk all things true crime.
Made contact and shattered.
The missing 4-year-old. The parents have called in and that the mother has went through a wall, came home, now they can't find her.
Chad, where are Lori's kids? They've been missing for 4 months. You have nothing to say?
4 were stabbed multiple times and were likely asleep during the attack. Some had defensive wounds.
Most of them had just like one that was the lethal stab wound.
Oh, what a tangled web we weave. Once I told a lie, and I told my family, I had to keep lying.
What's your, is it deemed?
We haven't cleared anybody.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here for another ATS News live stream. We are going to recap the first week in the Karen Read, John O'Keefe trial, and lots of reasonable doubt, definitely in this case, which is, I think, what makes it so interesting. It's not a closed cut case like other ones that we've seen, like Adam Montgomery, even Chad Daybell's case. I think everyone pretty much knows, like, he's guilty. We pretty much know the story in that one. Same with Alex Murdaugh. We kind of were, it was really interesting trial to watch. However, this trial and everything going along with this case is just one big question mark for me, at least. It's very puzzling, very disturbing and unsettling, what is taking place in Canton, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. So what I've done is collected some clips from throughout the week, and I've added visuals to some statements that were made in court. So you'll hear the lawyers from the Commonwealth, which is the prosecution in this case. And then you'll hear statements from the defense team, and there will be visuals with those statements. So instead of just watching the lawyers at their podium speaking, there's just new visuals that include, just stuff from the crime scene, people involved that are mentioned, etc. So you'll get the deal. So I put that together, and then we'll just go through some other statements and highlights from this week and just discuss things. So I want to make sure everyone can hear me. Modine says Karen is cooked. Melanie, good to see you. Hi, Sherry. Hi, Zoe. Good to see you. Adrian's here. Thanks for being here. I know it's very late where you are. Natasha's here. Let me know if I'm cutting out. Okay, Johnny says sound is good. Internet speed, just checked it before I went live. It should be good. And guys, I have a new setup. Hi, Dustin. Good to see you. I've got a new camera instead of using my laptop camera. And I've also got a new microphone that I got for my birthday. I just haven't set it up, but I'm looking forward to setting all that up soon and just showing you guys a different viewpoint. So thank you, Johnny, for the tea. E.E. Caroline, good to see you. Seth is here again. Good to see you. Shmita, she's here for it. So glad. I'm happy to see you as well. All right. So yeah, did Karen do it? That is the big question. Lots of reasonable doubt. Like I said, lots of testimonies this week. Some of them, kind of just repeated each other's, and then other ones kind of went against other people's statements. So let's get into it. Let me share some of my clips, and then we will just pause and elaborate when we need to, okay? And hit that like button if you haven't done so. It really helps the channel out, and it's much appreciated.
Now, as far as your relationship with the defendant, Ms. Reed,
so I tried to put the names of everybody on the stand and kind of explain their relation to Karen or John. So this is Paul, John's brother.
Prior to January 29th, 2022, how would you characterize it?
I thought we had a good relationship. I held her in very high regard. I thought she was a good influence on my niece and nephew. I appreciated all the help that she was providing to my brother with the kids. we'd go out together as, couples, a couple times. She became very friendly with my wife, but I'd say overall we had a good relationship.
So I have his wife clipped after Paul's little segment here. So then it'll go into his wife. Her name is Erin, and she's going to explain something strange that she heard Karen say at the scene of the crime when they first arrived there. And obviously everything was very much chaos at that moment. John is found laying in the yard. His head is pointed towards the house. He only has one shoe on. And again, he was not wearing a jacket. He was wearing like a light little hoodie. And hello, MK. Good to see you.
As far as those positive feelings that you had in relation to the defendant prior to January 29th, 2022, had you expressed those to either the defendant or any member of her family?
Yes. So Christmas Eve of 2021 was the first time I met her parents. My brother hosted Christmas Eve at his house. I met Mr. and Mrs. Reed. I offered to help Mrs. Reed, carry some things in from her car. And as we were walking to the car, I said, I just want to tell you, I think your daughter's great. I think very appreciative of what she's done for the kids and helping my brother.
She told me that.
Okay, so this is Paul's wife. She was very close with Karen. And she's going to tell you what Karen said to her, something along the lines of, I just need to remember the bad times. Now, remember, Karen is, numerous people have stated that Karen was in shock and hysterics. And so I'm curious what chat thinks of her statement. So once Erin kind of does her little testimony here, her little clip, I want to know what chat and those on replay, what you guys think about Karen stating this, and I'll give you my opinion as well.
She had to remember the bad times, which struck me as an odd comment to say, but I assumed since she was at the hospital that maybe she was medicated, but it just struck me as something odd.
I have to remember the bad times. So again, she's saying that she spoke with her over the phone. This was something that she had said to Erin over the phone. Karen stated this. Again, this is, she's very much in shock. I believe something like that. I don't really see much nefarious, energy surrounded by that statement. I don't know if Erin, she just basically says that she thought it was odd. I think that when people are trying to grasp something as, devastating as this was, that you say and do things that like normally you wouldn't. For example, I guess the only way I can kind of relate it is when my dad unexpectedly died in an accident. I just remember like a lot of like people around him saying things like, well, it's better than if he ever got cancer and something like that. And it's like, you just say things to kind of help your brain grasp like the devastation. And like, it sounds like it makes sense to you at the moment. Like it's helping you cope. So if things are kind of going haywire, like for Karen at this time in her mind, I think she's thinking like, I just have to remember the bad times to kind of like help her deal with him being gone, if that makes sense. Curious what you guys think. Do you think that that is a strange statement? Do you think that that makes her look guilty? Let me know. Let me just hear it one more time. Modi says, I think it was a poor taste in words to say that, in my opinion. Thank you, Natasha. I appreciate that. That's the only way I could I put myself in her shoes. Again, I'm still on the fence of her guilt or innocence. Shmita says guilty. And I just feel like, to give Karen the benefit of the doubt, maybe she was saying that to kind of help herself cope with him being gone. Like, okay, if I remember the bad times, then I can kind of grasp this devastation a little bit better because, you know, we weren't always that great together. It's weird. It definitely is a weird statement to make. Thank you, Seth. I appreciate that.
Which I've that she had to remember the bad times, which struck me as an odd comment to say, but I assumed since she was at the hospital that maybe she was medicated. But it just struck me as something odd. She said, "I don't think I'm ever going to see you guys again." And I said, "Of course you will. We're friends."
From all of those people within that house that evening, none of them at any point in time was there John O'Keefe come into the house. They see the vehicle out front, they see the vehicle pull away, and they just assume that they left, and that no one was coming.
And it's stated repeatedly, I killed.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting, Dustin. He says, I agree too, Amber. I really feel like Karen and the whole group was pretty drunk, and whether he was beat up and killed by the house group or accidentally hit by Karen or the plow, not sure. Yeah, I could see it going either way. First impressions, like we kind of saw a little bit there of the Commonwealth doing their opening statement, and then you'll see the defense soon do their opening statements. I felt like there was way more confidence and a better presence in the courtroom by the defense team. More interesting to watch, it just seems like they're stating it as absolute fact. Of course, both sides believe their story and want their theory to be believed by the jury. But I think if I was on the jury and I was watching these opening statements, I just feel like Commonwealth looked down too much, didn't really make much eye contact and look up. It kind of gave me the impression that they weren't as confident in their theory. Again, that's just my perception. And this whole thing regarding the snow plow, a lot of people, I'm including myself, have said things like, why would Karen purposely, back her car up and hit John knowing that she's right in front of a house full of cops? And then on the other hand, it's like, why would these cops and people inside that house lay John in front of their house? And, because it's still going to kind of point to themselves in a way. But I just feel like if this cover up runs as deep as the defense claims, that maybe there was a level of confidence in the people in the house, like, oh, let's do it this way. And don't worry, I know so-and-so and I know so-and-so and we'll be safe. We can make it look like the plow hit them. And then as soon as Karen shows up and she's, saying things like, I hit him or did I hit him? Stuff like that. I think that maybe the plan changed for them. Like they didn't initially plan on framing Karen Read, but once she kind of walked herself into this situation of making strange statements in a state of shock and panic, I also think maybe she was confused. She was super drunk, in my opinion. Some people don't think she was drunk at all. I think that maybe when she backed out of her driveway and hit John's car in that CCTV footage, that ring footage, that maybe she kind of was mixing up things that happened during the night when she was still a little drunk, if that makes sense. So again, I just feel like there could have been a chance that maybe these people in the house didn't plan on just framing Karen right off the bat. They just figured, because in the 911 call, they say something strange like a man in the yard under snow. So it seems like maybe their hopes and plans were like, oh, the plow must have hit him. But then as soon as Karen kind of willingly said, like, I hit him or did I hit him? Stuff like that. I think that maybe the plan switched and they're like, okay, let's just let it go in that direction, see what happens. Modine says, I'm not worried about one statement. I think that many hearing her say I hit him and her saying they are all in it together to frame her is going to hurt her. And what's interesting too is we heard so many statements from first responders on the scene. And it's troubling to me that I hit him didn't make it into the initial police report. And with 7 first responders and witnesses, 4 heard her say something like that and 3 didn't. So it's kind of almost like split down the middle of like who heard it and who didn't. So I find that noteworthy and interesting and causes some reasonable doubt as well. Remember, they've kind of laid out the theory that these first responders were kind of very close, as everyone kind of knows. They really do work very closely with the cops as is. So are people just saying that she said something just because, or did she really say it? And if she really said it, then was she just in shock? Did it mean anything? Thank you so much, MK, for gifting 8 memberships, and welcome to those members. And if you received a membership in chat right now, feel free to thank our wonderful MK for that. And Jen Lou is here. Good to see you. Thank you so much for showing up. I appreciate seeing you in my chat. But all right, so let's continue. And hello, Tony, and everyone else who's joined. Unless she was a raging alcoholic, she was definitely highly intoxicated, especially when you consider the amount of drinks in her body weight. Yeah, she's tiny. Okay, bye, Seth. Have a good night. But she was also saying the paramedics and the firefighters are also in on it. Absurd. And yeah, that's kind of a stretch for certain people. And like I said, almost half of them heard it and half of them didn't hear it. This is still the Commonwealth speaking.
I hit him. The last that she saw Mr. O'Keefe, they had gotten into an argument before he had gotten out of the car in front of Fairview Road. He'll opine that around 12:45 in the morning, when the vehicle was in front of the residence on Fairview, that for some perceptible period of time, that vehicle travels over 60 feet in reverse at over approximately 24.2 miles per hour. Among the items that they locate is a sneaker. When Mr. O'Keefe is transported to the hospital, he's found to only have one sneaker on his feet. They find the other sneaker in that area of the body. They find various pieces of the taillight. You'll hear testimony in regard to a laceration to the right back of his head. You'll hear testimony in regard to an initial sort of skull fracture that occurs to the back of his head, and then sort of a radiating skull fracture that goes throughout his skull, which then leads to subdural hemorrhage, or essentially bleeding on the brain, and then swelling of the brain, which then causes a condition called ecchymosis, which then sort of leads to the swelling of both of Mr. O'Keefe's eyes that is observed by the initial response. And what I submit to you at that time, that second time, is that the only true and just verdict based on that is that the defendant, Karen Read, is guilty of murder in the second degree.
Okay, so we're about to get into the defense's statements. Dustin says, even the fact that Karen might have said that, it's an honest statement, not knowing if she did it or not, an honest statement in as much as truly shocked and drunk. And like I said, it wasn't written in the initial police reports. So to me, that's sort of problematic. Tony says, I think she was in shock and questioning what she was told, in my opinion. To me, not hearing it does not mean it was not said. They just didn't hear it. Right. That could be it too. They just weren't in that area when she was stating it. It can also mean that maybe she wasn't saying it the way that the other people are hearing it. Again, somebody testified today, paramedic, that she stated it almost as a question. Did I hit him? So is it a question or is it a statement? Hi, Roxanne. Good to see you. They will present witnesses this week that did put in their reports. We shall see, Modine, but the initial guy did not put it in his report. Yeah, I'm not moved one way or another about the statement. It's concerning that it wasn't in the initial reports. Yeah, and like you were saying on Alex's live stream, it's like when people are in that kind of state of like hysteria and obviously shock, I mean, every single one of those first responders agreed with the defense that she was visibly super upset. Not only that, but this is an also noteworthy thing. She was the only one out of everybody there that was giving him first aid. So, you know, this was at a police officer's house. Somebody else calls 911. They're not administering CPR. It was only Karen. Now, that can go either way, you know, like she was drunk, she realized what she did, so she's obviously going to try her best to save him. Or she didn't do it and she's just trying her best to save the person she loves. There's instances where we have held people accountable for not rendering CPR on their loved one and been like, what's going on here? Remember when Alex Murdaugh said something, you know, about CPR and they showed up, there was no blood on his face, there was no blood on his shirt, like he didn't try, you know, I think he says something about Paul's brain out, so it might have been so obvious, like I'm not going to administer CPR to Paul, but it was held against him in a way, even if people didn't think that, you know, it was beyond, Paul was beyond saving. People still judged him for not rendering CPR. Here we have the opposite. She's giving him CPR. She has blood in her on her face and everywhere. So it's very interesting the way that everyone's kind of responding to her as, you know, she's guilty, even though she was the only one who was actually trying to save him. I think it's noteworthy. Still, I'm on the fence. I haven't made up my mind either way. Yeah, I feel like she was trying to save him. Why wouldn't the police help? Right. That's very confusing. And hello, Chase, and everyone else who's joined.
Will instead try to persuade you that Karen Read supposedly had a motive to kill John O'Keefe because they were not getting along. You'll hear about their trip to Aruba over New Year's Eve and that Karen was upset that John had been flirting with another woman. And you will hear that Karen considered exploring her options after that trip, which led her to a get-together at one point with ATF federal agent Brian Higgins, although that never went anywhere.
Okay, so since he brought up Brian Higgins, going back to this whole, like, she had motive because he wanted to break up with her and she didn't want things to be done. Well, it seems like she kind of has options, you know, and the prosecution will use this against her, this little text message that took place. I believe they hung out one time as well, her and that ATF agent. So this is where I kind of say, like, okay, so why would she kill John just because he wants to break up with her? She clearly has other options. She clearly knows that, you know, she's a good-looking woman. I just feel like this whole motive of killing him because he was going to break up with her is weak. Personally, that's just my opinion. I just feel like even in a drunk state, I'm not really buying it. It showed her van and it hit a tiny bit of his tail light. Yeah, I feel like it definitely didn't shatter it, but could it have been enough to kind of crack it in case somebody else kind of decided to take it upon themselves to finish the shattering, like manually? Because remember, they confiscated her vehicle and then they found the taillights at the scene. Shelly Bean says, I've been that mad. Oh dear. Just reading your guys' comments.
But you'll also hear that in January of 2022, after the Aruba trip, and not long before January 28th and 29th, John O'Keefe was making long-term plans with Karen, including a family trip with her and the kids, and also another trip with Karen and another couple for months into the future. And you'll see video of how John and Karen were interacting on the night in question. You'll see for yourself how they looked at each other on the video at the waterfall that night. Nobody who saw them that night saw anything wrong. There was nothing wrong. I mean, like any couples, occasionally they would bicker or disagree, but you will hear zero evidence of any domestic violence in that home whatsoever. John never raised a hand in anger toward Karen, and Karen never raised a hand in anger toward John. That simply wasn't who they are. She got back into her Lexus. She backed up out of the garage to leave the driveway, and when she did, the right rear taillight of her Lexus struck John's parked vehicle in the driveway, and her taillight cracked. That was the same taillight that the prosecution now claims was broken outside the Albert residence hours earlier at 12:30 a.m. But we have video evidence that the taillight was actually broken at 5 a.m., many hours after the prosecution needs that taillight to have been broken. There is, of course, no video of the taillight being broken at Brian Albert's house. You will eventually conclude that that's because the taillight was not broken there. You'll learn that right from the jump, Michael Proctor predetermined the outcome of this case.
So Michael Proctor is the lead investigator on this case, for those who don't know. So just keep that in mind. Michael Proctor is the lead investigator on this case.
Never stepped foot inside the Albert home on January 29th, 2022. Never checked out whether there were any signs of struggle inside that home. He never called for crime scene technicians and other specialists to look for blood or other trace evidence within the home. He never asked Brian Albert for permission to go in the home and take a look around. Michael Proctor never applied for a search warrant to go in that home.
Does that make anybody in chat unsettled that that house was never really looked into as a crime scene or, processed like a crime scene? To me, that's kind of noteworthy. Again, the defense's job is to kind of poke holes in the investigation and to cause reasonable doubt. I feel like they don't even need to do that much in this case because the police have kind of done that themselves. Somebody is found dead on somebody's front yard. You would think instantly you'd be wondering, like, okay, what took place in that house? Like, how are we so certain that this crime took place outside? It's almost like they had like confirmation bias right off the bat. So chat is a little disturbed by it. It's strange. If it was any of us that this happened to, do you think that the cops would want to come in your home or see what's going on? But this, of course, is a cop's house that it happened at. And the people who are investigating this crime know the people who own the house. Why would the cops go in that home? No evidence of anything happening in the home. How do you know there's no evidence of anything happening in the home if it wasn't processed? There was obviously no premeditation, and the notion that Karen would have just killed him to me sounds preposterous. The lack of not searching the home for evidence of foul play is crazy. And not only that, but even if the crime didn't take place in the house, they're treating it as if the crime took place outside the house, right? But then why wasn't the crime scene secured? It never was secured. They didn't put up a tent. They didn't have, where exactly was his extra shoe found? They just keep stating that they found it. He only had one shoe at the hospital. They found the other shoe. Like where? Where exactly was it? Everything should have been checked. Again, this isn't just anybody's house. This is also a Boston police officer's death. And this is how they kind of fumble it, in my opinion. The defense team just said, Modine, that they never went in the home. They never checked it for blood or any of those types of things. They never got a search warrant for the home. So then what happens too when the crime scene isn't secured, hours later, they end up finding things at the crime scene after so many cops were there and didn't see the tail light. It goes unsecured and then they end up finding things.
Instead, he focused immediately and exclusively on Karen Read, the outsider.
So how did Michael Proctor feel about her?
To his friends whom he trusted, and in text messages that he never thought would come into the hands of the defense in this case. Lead investigator, Trooper Michael Proctor, right from the start, called Karen Read names you would reserve only for your worst enemies. He told his friends that he hoped that she would kill herself. He told his friends that he had seized her cell phone. And you will learn that he knew he shouldn't have been accessing any content on her cell phone because he knew there would likely be attorney-client communications on between Karen and me at that time. He knew that he was supposed to wait for a search warrant or other permission from a judge in order to go through that phone. But you'll learn that he went through the phone anyway, without permission. And you'll know that he did because he told his high school buddies that he was searching her phone for nude photos of Karen Read. And he was disappointed he hadn't found any yet. That is the professional and unbiased investigator who was chosen to lead the investigation into the death of John O'Keefe, thinking she was.
Anna says there were no tracks in the snow going to the house. That is a statement made by the first responding officer. Now, my question for that is, well, then how did these people leave the house? Because there was 13 people at the party. People left that night. Nobody saw John. So how are there no tracks leaving for the house? They all had to get in their vehicle. And this is where it comes in where the defense would say, yes, but we know that the cops are involved in the cover-up. So how can we believe that guy's statement? I'm not saying I don't believe it or I do believe it. I'm just saying this is what they're spewing, that, you know, the cops are part of this cover-up. So if he says that there was no tracks from the house to John, how can we be so sure and how can we believe that? You have no probable cause to search a house just because a traffic fatality took place out front. But this wasn't just a traffic fatality. It was the house that he allegedly was dropped off at a party of people that he knew inside who were text messaging him the address to come into the house. And he was allegedly hanging out with these people and the owners of that house. So it's not just somebody, a pedestrian who was outside who was killed and they happened to lay on your yard and you're like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. No, this was somebody who, you know, knew him, who had communications with him through the phone, invited him over, was under the impression that he was coming over, and then he ends up on their yard. So it's a little different than just some random person laying out in your yard dead. Body cam footage, none of them had them. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because they were local and not state cops and the first people that, you know, took over. Not really sure. And remember, that cop who said that there was no tracks leading from the house to John is the same cop who did not put in his statements at first what Karen was saying, I hit him. So, incomplete notes, or did she never say it? Karen said he went in the side door and also said she never saw him go in. I remember numerous statements that she made where she said she saw him enter the house. Apparently the firefighters and paramedics and the cops all belong to the same gym, we find out. Again, this is the thing, is how deep does this cover up run? How much will you believe it? How much will the jury believe it? It's up to the jury, but I don't think that it's far-fetched to think that paramedics and firefighters would go along with, I mean, they all work together Just because you're a paramedic and a firefighter doesn't mean that you don't know these cops. I mean, they all show up to the same scenes. They're a part of the same community. I'm just telling you guys what the defense is saying. Again, I'm still torn, not set either way. And if we're going to talk about the integrity of the police, I mean, why is this officer searching her phone for nude photos when he shouldn't have even had access to her phone? So the defense kind of lays it out right now, like, take the part of the nude photos out. This officer is going through her phone without a warrant when there's client and attorney privilege conversations going on this device. He knew he shouldn't have been doing that without, a court order. Right. Why did he hope that she would unalive herself? Right. I mean, that kind of just plays into, for some reason, this guy hated her. Don't know why.
Alone with her thoughts, not worrying that anyone would know what she was doing. Jennifer McCabe typed in the following Google search: how long to die in the cold? Now, she misspelled the first word, so the actual search was how long to die in the cold, but you'll get the point. You will ask yourself, why would somebody Google how long does it take for someone to die in the cold, unless that person knew someone who either was in that situation or would be in that situation? Karen Read was framed. Her car never struck John O'Keefe. She did not cause his death. You'll learn that one of Michael Proctor's high school friends commented to him that with a dead body on the front lawn, the homeowner in this case is surely going to catch a lot of grief. And do you know what Michael Proctor's response to that was? One word. Nope.
Why would, and here his friend is even saying, like, okay, somebody dies on your yard, like the homeowner is going to catch some grief. I mean, other people are under the impression that that homeowner should be looked into. He was dropped off at their house for a party. And why would the lead detective be saying, nope? Oh, by the way, lead detective knows the homeowner.
During that thorough search of Brian Albert's front lawn, the number of pieces of tail light that were found by a minimum of 4 officers looking for evidence was 0. It was only later in the day, when the snow was really starting to accumulate, that the police miraculously started to find pieces of taillight on the property. The police only started to find pieces of taillight after Michael Proctor had seized Karen Read's car.
When I arrived, I saw Miss Read looked like she was giving CPR to him, and she had blood on her face. Miss Read was visibly upset.
Yes, Anna, that was interesting. The fireman also said Karen wanted to know how long to die in the cold or something like that. Yes, he testified that today, that, in their conversations together, she was kind of asking those questions. So again, that kind of is interesting and ironic considering the Google search. That was something that I was like, wait a minute. Okay, that doesn't look very good for Karen.
She kept saying, this is all my fault. This is my fault. I did this. And she was very hysterical. She kept asking, he's dead. Is he dead? Is he dead?
If anything, did you note around Mr. O'Keefe's body as far as the condition of or disturbance of the snow around him?
I noticed that there were footprints and track marks around the body itself. There was none coming from the residence or the area. It was just right around the body itself.
Yes. Walking toward the front of the house. Yes. That was Jennifer McCabe going into the house, wasn't it?
I have no idea.
Would you think that a witness at a homicide scene being allowed to go into a house to make contact with other witnesses?
I didn't know it was a homicide scene, sir.
If I could finish my question. Do you think it's appropriate for a witness at a potential homicide scene an unconscious person scene, whatever, crime scene.
Yes.
To make contact with other witnesses and begin discussing the situation unsupervised?
Can you rephrase that question, sir?
Do you think that's an appropriate thing to have happen?
I have no answer for that, sir. I don't know what you're asking.
Officer Seraph, when you go to a crime scene,
yes, sir,
one of the first things that you'd want to do is secure the scene and separate witnesses so that interviews could be conducted, correct?
Sure.
You wouldn't want witnesses just cavorting together and getting their story straight, right?
Correct.
You'd want to avoid that at all costs,
yes.
right?
Yes.
And why is that?
So they can't collaborate their story.
The initial conversation, she was very upset. She kept saying.
So for anyone else, does anyone else find it problematic that on the dash cam you can see Jennifer enter the house, and like the defense says, you know, why weren't any of these witnesses separated and you know, asked for statements? Instead, it left the door open for them to kind of corroborate what they were going to say or plan. Again, I'm almost feeling like the plan wasn't first to frame Karen. I think they were going to blame it on, you know, a snowplow, he was drunk, something like that. But then as soon as Karen starts making these statements like, did I hit him, etc., I think that maybe they were like, okay, I think we're going to just go with that. That's my personal opinion, of course.
So we had a Section 12 written, and that was to take her to the hospital because she made threats against her life, saying, "I don't want to live anymore. If my husband dies, I don't want to be alive anymore." And myself and Jason and Lieutenant Woodbury were kind of like, well, that's seemingly more in the lines of normal grieving process after something traumatic happens to a loved one, whether they're going to die or not. We kind of didn't feel like it kind of led to that level of a Section 12 to have her transported to the hospital. So at that point, I exited the ambulance and I went to speak with Officer Saraf, and I said, you know, this kind of doesn't. If we want her to be at the hospital, get a full eval, we're going to need more than just, if my husband dies, I want to die, because that seems just like normal grieving things to say.
She was cooperative.
So again, these are the first responders that testified today. They end up taking Karen to a psych evaluation because of the comments that she was stating. Again, if she's in that frame of mind where she's saying things like, I don't want to go on without him, stuff like that, and where they're at the point where they're saying, like, I think we should take her in. I think in New York, we call it 5150, I think. Sectioned, whatever they call it. So she's taken in. She kind of has no choice because of the statements that she's making. They felt like, you know, she needed to be taken in. So then if she's so unwell that she needed to be sectioned, then how do we trust the things that are coming out of her mouth? You know, so she's so distraught, she's so hysterical that she's saying things that they're like, okay, we got to get her evaluated because, you know, we can't leave her with these thoughts and these statements she's saying in case she does hurt herself. Like, we all witnessed it. Like, you know, there's like a liability aspect too. So she's so distraught. She's saying things that are, you know, alarming to them. They have to take her in. So then in my mind, it's almost like anything that she was saying during that time, like, can we even take serious? So when it comes to, I hit him, you know, does that really mean as strongly as it would if she wasn't taken in 5150? So I don't know if you guys understand what I'm saying, but it's like, if she's that distraught and in that state of mind where she's very unwell and she needs to be evaluated, can we really say that those statements that she was saying were factual and truthful? She's obviously saying things that are out of her mind, that she's not thinking, this guy here is going to say that, you know, somebody around her were telling her to settle down, that she's, you know, hysterical. So again, I'm just in that frame of mind where I'm like, well, you know, she was very, very upset. Everybody has agreed to that. So can we really hold her statements against her when they all agreed that she needed to be evaluated by like a psych doctor?
Then she'd be calm, and then eventually she would kind of get a little agitated and repetitive questions. But she seemed distraught.
Now, with respect to the person she indicated was her husband, what, if any, questions did she ask either you or firefighter Whitley or both in relation to him?
She was asking if he was dead, or could he be dead? Could he be dead? And she said, could I have hit him?
It feels we're the only ones fighting for the truth of what happened to John O'Keefe. And me and my family and my attorneys and my team have marshaled every resource to get to the truth. It just feels like no one else wants it.
Karen, just to be clear, you didn't do it.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
Yes, we do.
All right, so I hope you guys like the little clips that I put together. Now I want to just show some of other highlights from this week as well. And yeah, I mean, initially I was like, well, I can't even say that I thought that she had done it. I'd seen somebody in chat say at first that they thought that she was guilty. Now they don't know. I thought she was guilty when I first heard about it until I found out so much more. Yeah, the more you dig, the more you're just like, wait, what? It's just, there's too much reasonable doubt. Again, medical examiner is stating that the cause of death is undetermined. The medical examiner also wrote in her notes, or his or her notes, that the injuries caused to his body were not from a fight. But FBI takes over, or does their own inquiry into the case, and they say the injuries on John's body were not made from a vehicle. And then we have Joseph Scott Morgan, a forensic analysis expert, who's come out saying that he doesn't think that those are dog bites. Then we have another expert who trains canines on Melanie Little's channel, who is saying that those definitely are dog bites. So it's a lot of conflicting opinions, even from experts in this case. So this is Law and Crime. It says 5 controversial moments. I'm not going to play the whole thing. Anything that I've already shown to, we'll kind of skip over. But this kind of just highlights even more of the testimonies this week, so we can just watch them.
There was no limit to the amount of words that you could put on the page, correct?
Defense attorney Alan Jackson continued to question Officer Seraph about what he recalled Karen Read saying right after O'Keefe was found in the snow.
In the 2 times that you were asked to reflect back on exactly what happened that morning, on January 29th and January 30th, both times you attributed only 3 words to my client having been repeated continually in her distraught state. Is he dead? Right?
Yes.
And she wasn't saying that calmly, I'm assuming.
No,
Matter of fact, you used the word she was severely distraught. Is that right?
that's correct.
When you say severely distraught, we saw part of that on your dash cam. She was emotional,
Yes.
upset,
Yes.
focused on John,
Yes.
trying to save his life,
Yes.
and asking, what was the question that she asked?
Is he dead?
Over and over and over, correct?
Correct.
Jackson then questioned Seraph about his grand jury testimony 2.5 months later.
In fact, on April 14th, 2022, months after this event, for the first time, you said, quote, and these are your words, tell me if I get them right. She, this is my fault. I don't know. She said, I can't believe this happened. I mean, she kept asking if he was going to die, if he's dead. And, I just basically said, we're doing the best that we could.
So suddenly his statements kind of changed. So he didn't write down any of this in his first report. Now they do the grand jury, and he's testifying to something different. Again, is it something or is it nothing?
End quote.
That's correct.
May I approach?
Yes.
So in April of 2022, for the first time, you attributed the phrase, "This is my fault. I can't believe this happened," to my client, correct?
That's correct.
But nowhere in your official report did you say that.
That's correct.
And nowhere in your interview with Trooper Proctor the next day did you say that.
That's correct.
You think that was a pretty important omission on your part?
It was an oversight.
An oversight.
Yes, sir.
That a woman whom you made contact with, standing over the body of a fallen police officer, said to you, "This is my fault." Just missed that one.
I mean, that's kind of troubling and puzzling at the same time. Why were these statements not initially made in his reports? And then, months later, once things have kind of progressed, suddenly he's remembering certain things like that. It just never looks good. Let's face it. Not saying that, you know, she's innocent. I'm just saying.
Yes, I missed it. Yeah, I didn't write it down.
So these discrepancies are threads the defense is pulling on and things they've been discussing publicly for more than 2 years now as they work to paint a picture that there's a massive cover up to protect the real killer or killers of John O'Keefe. On redirect, the state asked Seraph about what he said and remembered.
And you were shown specifically some grand jury testimony from April of 2022 in which you indicated during that testimony that the defendant stated, "This is my fault."
Yes.
And is that based on your memory of what she said?
Yes.
And you also testified yesterday along those same lines, correct?
Correct.
What you testified to before this jury, as far as your memory, is that accurate as to what happened on that scene, January 29th, 2022?
Yes.
Another reason supporters of Karen Read believe her frame-up theory, she claims she was the only person who cared about trying to save John O'Keefe's life. You see her in that dash cam video with Carrie Roberts and Jennifer McCabe.
Isn't it true that Jennifer McCabe pulled you aside while my client and Carrie Roberts stayed with John O'Keefe and began engaging you in a conversation?
Yes.
I remember Jennifer McCabe is the one who allegedly searched on her phone how long to die in the cold at 2:30 in the morning, well before John's ever found in the yard.
And she was providing some sort of a narrative to you, correct?
Correct.
While the other two women are trying to save John O'Keefe's life, she's talking to you.
For brief seconds, I would say.
For brief seconds?
Yes.
You saw the dash cam video. Was those several minutes on the dash cam video where she's standing and having a conversation with you? Are those the brief seconds?
I don't know what time frame you're talking about.
Right after you got there.
Right after I got there.
Correct. Did you ever see Jennifer McCabe do anything physically to help John O'Keefe?
No, I didn't see anything.
Did Jennifer McCabe offer to you during that brief seconds that you described, this narrative that she was having?
Alex says that makes 0 sense. I'm sorry, that makes 0 sense. What? I missed it because I was typing in chat. I'm curious now.
Conversation she was having with you. Did she ever offer the fact that she was standing in front of her sister's house?
No.
Did she ever offer the fact that her brother-in-law, who lives in the house, is a first responder?
Objection.
Sustained.
Right.
Were you apprised at any time while you were out there that the homeowner?
And apparently they're going to have their own experts that kind of say like, well, no, that search wasn't done. You know, they're going to explain it all they can. Yes, Alex, I heard you saying that today in your live stream. And I'm like, I've been hearing that from so many people. Nobody is getting notified. It's very annoying. Like YouTube needs to get it together. I don't say helping or not as indicative of anything. Some people won't go near an injured person. That's true. Obviously, it can be scary.
There was a first responder.
Objection.
Sustained.
Based on your observations between Karen Read and Jennifer McCabe, which one of those women appeared to be more focused on trying to save John's life in the moment?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Can you repeat the question, sir?
Between Karen Read and Jennifer McCabe, which one of those two women, based on your observations, appeared to you to be more focused on physically trying to save John O'Keefe's life in the moment?
At that point, it was Karen Read.
Now, very early on in this trial, we're in week 1, the defense is painting Jennifer McCabe as a major villain in their conspiracy theory. She is the sister-in-law of Brian Albert, the owner of the home at 34 Fairview Road. The defense is basically implying that Jennifer McCabe already knew that John O'Keefe was dead, and the fix was in. The setup was in motion.
Did you also see Carrie Roberts seemingly assisting in chest compressions?
I don't remember who exactly it was, but it appeared that somebody was doing.
What about
purchase.
The third woman, Jennifer McCabe?
They were all around the body.
Did you see Jennifer McCabe ever engage with John O'Keefe as he lay on the ground and assist in any life-saving measures? Did you witness that?
I don't recall.
Okay, yeah, send me that, Alex. The 2 a.m. search is referenced in the second report done by the Commonwealth or something. I'll send it. I'm waiting on testimony, so I'm not sure on the details. Yeah, I'm not sure either on the details. I also heard the Commonwealth used Celebrate, but an older model of it. And then the defense team used Celebrate, a more updated, more recent version of it. And then they found more details on it. I don't know, but we'll find out.
But you do recall my client engaged.
Yes.
Did Jennifer McCabe offer to you during that brief seconds that you described, this narrative that she was having, this conversation she was having with you, did she ever offer the fact that she was standing in front of her sister's house?
No.
The defense has repeatedly brought up Jennifer McCabe and what she did or didn't do that morning.
Did you see Jennifer McCabe approach that house at any point when you were on scene?
No.
Were you alerted at any point by anyone that she went into that house while you were on scene?
No.
Did you ever see Jennifer McCabe come out of that house with blankets or anything else that might comfort John O'Keefe?
No.
Now, to me, that's odd. I don't know how anyone else feels, but people weren't even trying to like warm him up. Now, again, there were some paramedics and statements made where they thought like maybe they could save John O'Keefe. So like, yes, he ends up being declared dead at the hospital, but there seemed to be some hope. So again, with the head wound and everything like that, like why isn't anyone trying to help him? Like, why aren't we stopping the bleeding? Why aren't we trying to warm him up? Nobody was doing anything. So it looks like chat thinks that that's odd. And again, these are first responders. This isn't just, Joe Schmo's house. They don't know anything about, an emergency situation. These are people who are trained professionals. In fact, Brian Alberts, not only is he a police officer, but he's a Gulf War veteran. So why isn't anyone trying to figure out what's going on as far as, do we need to grab him blankets? Can I grab something? Again, people at the scene were collecting his blood in red Solo cups. So they clearly needed some sort of assistance or could have used some assistance from other people at that scene. So what was going on with people who didn't want to help? It gives me the impression they didn't want to save him. This case is very strange. It is. And you would think that of all houses, they would have, okay, Alex, I got your message. It says that it's loading, so it's going to take a while. But either way, thank you for sending. It's just, and they kind of get, the defense tries to point that out as well. Like, why is this house filled with first responders and no one was trying to render any aid to him, not except Karen? People aren't even trying to warm the body up with blankets.
What was your state of mind regarding whether there were any first responders in that house?
I wasn't aware of that.
Nobody told you?
No.
But the Commonwealth suggests the questioning by the defense is much ado about nothing.
Now, prior to this call, did you know Carrie Roberts?
No.
Did you know Karen Read?
No.
Did you know John O'Keefe?
No.
Did you know Jennifer McCabe?
No.
based on what you've seen as far as the dash camera, would you be able to differentiate between Jennifer McCabe or Kerry Roberts from that dash camera footage?
No.
While you were on scene, did you see anybody from 34 Fairview Road from that address come outside?
No.
In fact, Officer Seraph said for the entire 90 minutes he was on scene that morning, no one came outside of any house on Fairview Road. It was early in the morning on a Saturday, and it was a blizzard. As far as comparing the demeanor of Karen Read to Kerry Roberts and Jennifer McCabe, the Commonwealth pointed out through witnesses that not every person reacts to situations in the same way.
You've been to.
And isn't it funny how the Commonwealth excuses other people's behaviors that morning? But, well, not everyone responds the same way. But when Karen is saying things like, I hit him, could I have hit him, did I hit him? They use it against her. Well, isn't she just responding to things in her own way? Just playing devil's advocate. Evil Queen says, how many people were inside of the house when all this was going on? Don't quote me 100%, but I'm 90% sure there was like 3 people. I think. Pretty sure.
Other scenes in which there is a deceased person on scene, family members or friends around?
Yes.
And of those other scenes, does everybody who's a friend or a family member of the person who is injured or deceased, do they all react the same?
No.
Is every single one of them screaming and yelling different things?
No.
And there are actually 3 women on scene that morning, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So there was Jennifer McCabe, there was the defendant, Miss Reed, and there was Kerry Roberts, correct?
Correct.
And did you see any blood on Miss Roberts's face or hair?
No.
Okay. Was she screaming and yelling things and moving around the scene?
No.
Now, as far as the residents in 34 Fairview Road, did you see anybody go in or come out of that residence during the time that you were on scene?
No.
And as far as any of the other residences on the entire rest of the street, did you see any of the neighbors or anybody else come outside at any point in time?
I did not.
The Commonwealth contends that Karen Read hit John O'Keefe with her SUV and was putting on a show for police and paramedics, creating her own cover-up. Other officers and paramedics recalled seeing Karen Read that morning.
Now, as far as the defendant, Ms. Reed, what, if anything, do you recall her sort of doing as you're on scene and as you're going about what you're trying to do?
She was screaming, is that my boyfriend? Is he dead?
And when you say screaming in a fairly loud voice, correct?
Very, very loud, yes.
Officer Stephen Mullaney also described what Karen Read's face looked like.
Was there anything blocking your view of her face?
Not that I recall.
All right. You noticed, obviously, that she had blood on her face, correct?
I did not notice that. No.
You didn't notice that she had blood in her hair?
I did not notice that.
You did notice that she was absolutely hysterical?
Yes.
And that morning, Read had apparently made statements that raised concerns among some of the police and paramedics that she might be suicidal. Another paramedic recalled encountering Karen Read that morning as well.
And as far as your conversation with Ms. Reed, what, if any, questions asked in regard to the demographics or anything else?
So do you have any information of who this is? How are they here? Tried to get any type of information we could from her at that time.
So if they're asking her how John is here, etc., obviously she would have said, I dropped him off at this house party. He knew the people inside. You would think that that would kind of start the ball rolling for people who are in that house to be questioned. Like, yeah, we were just told that the girlfriend dropped John off and he came here for a house party. Of course, then they would probably say, like, he never made it in the house. We never saw him in the house. But at the same time, they never even got a warrant for the house. So how can we just take their word over Karen's word, pretty much? They easily could have been lying, just like Karen could have been lying. And hello, Brooks. Good to see you. So glad you're here.
With no luck.
When you say with no luck, what if any response did you receive from Ms. Reed in regards to your question?
So the only response that I was personally given was just, I hit him. Oh my God, I hit him.
And when she's saying, I hit him, oh my God, I hit him, how loudly is she saying that?
So she was within 2 feet of me, but very loud. Any type of follow-up questioning, did you hit him with your hand? Did you kick him? What happened? She just repeated the phrase over and over again, I hit him.
So these are just some of the reasons people are on the fence when it comes to this case. There are people who believe Karen Read was drunk and backed her SUV into John O'Keefe and took off after they had a major fight.
And that's a fair statement, Modine. I'm going to leave it on the screen for those to read. YouTube doesn't really like when we mention certain things. But yeah, I mean, that's fair to ask. And, you know, is it possible? Yeah, it's definitely possible. Also, you know, her being that drunk, as people are claiming, and putting it in reverse, going 24 miles an hour, there is a curb there. And somebody else pointed out, you know, nothing scraping up her tires or the rims from the curb. She's just, you know, drunk, but sober enough to drive straight into him. You know, how is it that she's able to have that kind of capability in driving in those weather conditions and at that speed, that drunk, and we don't see any other damage to the vehicle besides the taillight? Just kind of odd. I really want to believe she's innocent, but I'm struggling so hard with all these people risking their careers and reputations for what? Can't wait to see more evidence, right? That's the thing too. It's like, why would all these people decide like that they're gonna side with each other against her, you know? It's hard. It's hard to kind of imagine, but at the same time, it seems the defense has done a good job at kind of leaving the doubt there, kind of pointing out how this investigation was handled poorly. Remember, the crime scene was unsecured for a while. And then all of a sudden, pieces of her taillight are found there after they've taken her car in. Again, where is his other shoe? That's what I want to know. Melanie, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you for this amazing Friday Night Live. I'm just happy you guys are here hanging out with me. It really means a lot to me. I wouldn't do all that sober, let alone drunk. Right. And after these clips, I'm going to show you Vinnie Politan kind of did his own driving of the area. Of course, this is not wintertime, so it's not the same type of recreation. But, you know, 24 miles an hour is, when you see it, like, it's pretty fast going backwards. So, I mean, you know, she's that drunk and out of her mind that she's that angry and decides, I'm going to reverse it. And she hits him perfectly. It doesn't scrape up her rims or her tires either with that curb there.
And then later returned to fabricate a cover story. Others believe she's being framed by corrupt police officers, including lead detective Michael Proctor.
Called Karen Read names you would reserve only for your worst enemies. He told his friends that he hoped that she would kill herself, that he was searching her phone.
Okay, we already saw that in the clips that I showed in the beginning of chat, so I don't want to just play it again. But again, let me just share Vinnie at Court TV on scene doing his own recreation.
Okay, so that's about 60 feet. Now, I was going 4 miles an hour, so now we speed it up to 6 times, which would be about 24 miles an hour, if my math is right. Yeah, let me ask you, as we watch this, and I don't, you know, take what you want from it. Let me ask you, Rusty Haight.
So what do you think? I mean, that's pretty fast to me.
But I am going about 60 feet. Let's take a look at it.
All right, I'm going to back up. I'm going to go between 3 and 4 miles an hour.
This, of course, isn't going 3 or 4 miles an hour, but you can see the curb there.
Okay, so that's about 60 feet. Now, I was going 4 miles an hour, so now we speed it up to 6 times, which would be about 24 miles an hour, if my math is right. Yeah. Let me ask you, as we watch this, and I don't, take what you want from it. Let me ask you, Rusty Haight, about 24 miles an hour in reverse for 60 feet. What questions do you have about that? What would you expect to see if some level of contact was made with someone at that speed?
Well, my understanding is the other difference between that and what you did was there's supposed to be snow on the road. Getting up to 24 and keeping going straight in reverse at 24 miles an hour on a snowy road strikes me as something a little bit on the tough side. But that notwithstanding, the other thing that catches my eye is in some of the literature, there's supposed to be specifically 24.2 miles an hour, which suggests perhaps they have something from the car's event data recorder. But this kind of car requires a pretty good impact to have recorded an event, to record data associated with some sort of impact. And it's tough to imagine that with a pedestrian, with a body, and especially to the back end of the car. So I'm not quite 100% confident on that 24 mile an hour number.
All right, Dr. Kenny Kinsey, I've got something else I want to show you. So I did go to the scene and drive 24 miles an hour, but I drove it straight because I wasn't going to do it going backwards. Let's take a look at that. All right, what I'm going to do is drive 24 miles an hour just to give you an idea of.
Now, again, these people are inside the house, but at the same time, and it's a different vehicle that Vinny's driving, but for that amount of space and footage and her at that speed, you would think that maybe there could be somebody who heard the engine rev up, because you can hear it here when Vinny drives it. You can hear his engine kind of, it's loud.
Of how fast that is over the course of 60 feet, which isn't that far. Here we go. I'm now going 26 miles an hour, but it took me a while to get that fast.
Okay. 4 miles an hour, just to give you an idea of how fast that is over the course of 60 feet, which isn't that far. Here we go. I'm now going 26 miles an hour, but it took me a while to get that fast. Okay.
In snow, you don't hear motor sounds as much as usual. I have to disagree. Love you, but I've driven in the snow a lot. I've never noticed that my engine sound, although I guess with snow accumulating all around, it could kind of cause like a buffer in the area. Like when a room has more furniture in it, the sound isn't as loud as when the room is empty. I guess I could see that. But at the same time, I don't know. It makes me wonder, especially an SUV. It definitely has a louder engine than that little one. Oh, wow. That's crazy, Music City Mom. I'm so glad you're okay.
Now, we're going to show you the video in reverse. Let's take a look. Again, so we can see what 24 miles an hour looks like. So let me ask you, Dr. Kenny Kinsey, 24 miles an hour in reverse, what would you expect to see at the scene? Is this consistent? Is this plausible?
Vinny, once again, I've got to say that it is possible with a little caveat. It's going to depend on the victim's position And it's certainly going to depend on when the driver of that vehicle applied brakes and changed the momentum. Just think underneath that vehicle, if that center of gravity of that victim is lower than the midpoint of that vehicle or the area of impact, then he's got only one direction to go, and that's under the vehicle. But I think it'll go back to the injuries and the type of injuries, and if they can't replicate and prove what under that vehicle carriage, if it's not the bumper, as Rusty said, or it's not enough impact for the lens cover to cause that injury, if they can't attribute it to something under that carriage, then I see it being a problem for the prosecution.
I definitely agree. If they can't explain those arm injuries being tied to something on Karen's car, it's going to be a problem for the jury to kind of comprehend that those injuries took place from her putting it in reverse and hitting him personally. Now, most people who are hit by vehicles do lose their shoes. The question is still, where was the other shoe found? Was it found? That has been very all over the place when I'm researching this case. It's just one of those things where it's like, if it was found up near the house from, people have speculated that he was dragged and carried out the house and put on the yard. So was the shoe found in the house? Was the shoe found up near the house? Was the shoe never found? Was it taken away by the snowplow? Like, all that is going to matter. Undercarriage has lots of bolts. Well, then they'll need to show those bolts and show us like what caused those injuries. Now remember that it's not like he just has one scrape from a bolt. They'll have to line up those bolts to the lines on his arms and say, as this took place, these bolts scratched him this area. And again, where exactly are the tires in all this? Does he have tire imprints on his jeans? Is there something that kind of links the car to him and his shirt? It's just kind of mind-boggling to me still that, those arm injuries are from a vehicle. But again, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I have questions. All right, guys, I think that's going to conclude our week 1 recap. We're going to be following this, obviously, throughout the trial for the many weeks that it takes place and continue to do some recaps. I really appreciate you guys being here and those who gifted memberships and who donated super chats. Even for those people who just hit the like button and just hung out with me, I really appreciate it. Any final thoughts from chat? I totally need to know about the injuries, can think of a lot of possibilities, but I'm weak on his injury. Yeah, me too. Especially since, the back of his hands had bruises on them. I don't know. It's just kind of, and remember, FBI is claiming those injuries were not caused by a vehicle. So again, makes you wonder. And we also have Joseph Scott Morgan, who's an expert too in forensics, who's saying that he doesn't think that those, hi Debbie, he doesn't think that those injuries were from a dog bite. Now, why exactly couldn't they locate this dog? It was rehomed, so what? Why couldn't the defense track it down and say, hey, we know that you have this dog. Unfortunately, we need it as part of a murder case, and we need to kind of do some swabs, DNA swabs on it, or, the fact that they're not going to produce the dog as like part of their evidence, but still state that they're dog bites kind of makes me feel like that whole theory could be weak also. Not saying I don't believe it, but at the same time, it's like, shouldn't there have been a way to kind of get that dog back? Enough for some sort of inquiry with it. Karen Read is going down and the public is going to see it happen. We'll see. We'll see. She very well could have done this. And again, I've said before, like, I could see it being like an accident, but the fact that they're stating like, no, it wasn't an accident. She deliberately did this. He was breaking up with her. She was mad. That's where I'm like, I don't know. I don't know about that. But that's their theory. That's what they're trying to sell to 12 jurors. Will all 12 jurors believe it? So much reasonable doubt. Yeah, they rehomed the dog, but still, you should be able to track it down as like a defense team and be like, hey, there still should be a way to conjure up that dog. Did she really drop him off? Well, there's eyewitnesses that arrived behind them who said that they saw. Good to see you. Yeah, let's unpack that. All right, guys. Again, I need to go lay down, but I appreciate you guys being here. Tuesday, we're going to go live. Not sure on what. Definitely want to do a Watts live stream because there's been an unbelievable development in the little Watts Island, but I won't talk about it tonight. I'll save that for next week. Oh, thank you, Natasha. I feel the same way. Thank you all so much. I always have the best time with you all. Don't forget to like and support our girl. Hope to see you all soon. Yes. Thank you so much. They're truly charging her with first degree, which was a huge mistake on their part. It might turn out to be that way. Thank you. Yeah, I feel like the defense has way more confidence in the courtroom, their presence, their theory. They sound like of course, both of them want their theory to be bought, but it just seems like if I was on the jury, I'd be buying the defense's theory at this point. Not saying that I won't change my mind there, but week one, I feel like the defense team kind of won and came out on top personally. And thank you, Adrian, and all my moderators. Appreciate you guys. And what do you guys think? Who do you think won week one, defense or the Commonwealth? Let me know while we close out. I'll pull up your comments. And yep, I'll see you guys soon. Bye.